you have to think about the situation of a scholar as academic in, especially an American or Western European university, where you have to deal with this thing that is known as the 40-40-20. What does that mean? So that's 40%, 40%, 20%. Now what do those numbers refer to? So it's this idea that you're supposed to break up your time into these blocks. So one of the 40% blocks is teaching. I'll get to why that's sort of a farce in a second. Another one of those blocks is research. So that's the other 40% block. And then the third 20% block is usually what is referred to as service. Service can mean any of a bazillion different things. It could be community service, it could be service on sort of academic committees, it can be service on, say, dissertation committees, it could be advising, it can be a whole, I mean, basically anything that isn't teaching or research that somehow benefits the university can be qualified as service. Now, why is this a bit of a farce? Well, it has to do with the fact that while teaching is often described as being an important subset of what your average academic does, it rarely is. I mean, this may sound strange, because it's like, if you're supposed to do 40% of your work as teaching and 40% of your work as research, well, they should be on sort of equal footing, you would think, right? No. Why is this? Well, because it's sort of an unspoken or an unacknowledged, or whatever, it's an open secret that, say, like, let me give you two examples. If you had an academic who was a brilliant teacher, who was absolutely amazing, well regarded by both his students and also his colleagues for his skills in the classroom, had, thousands of butts in seats every single year, precisely what it is that university wants, and say didn't publish anything in the first, 5 years of his tenure track, or his pre-tenure, he's not going to get tenure. It's not going to happen. Not gonna happen. Now, alternatively, you could have someone who's the shittiest teacher on the face of the earth. Horrible. Absolutely, like just a horrible human being, impossible to listen to in the classroom, very, very poorly regarded by his colleagues in terms of his teaching acumen, and could have published, say, like 3 books, 12 articles, has a decent publishing record. That person will probably get tenure. So, you see, there's a bit of a double standard there. Teaching is not regarded as highly as research. Research is really the thing that sort of establishes your bona fides in regards to other faculty members. Anyway. So the reason why comic scholars want comic studies to become, a discipline, or at least a recognized field, is so that way the people who know absolutely nothing about comic studies whatsoever can look at it and go, oh, he's doing a recognized thing. He's a serious scholar, or she is well, let's use a woman as an example. She is a serious scholar, and we know this because she is part of a serious field, doing serious work in it. She publishes in all the serious journals. It's very serious. It's very, very serious. It's kind of funny because it's called comic studies. Fancy that. Anyway, so this is ultimately a self-serving thing. I mean, academics want comic studies to have this kind of status precisely because it helps them. And I think that's fair. I mean, I think that's perfectly reasonable. It's reasonable to think that the thing that you enjoy doing, the scholarship you enjoy engaging in, will be recognized by your peers. I think that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Why is it problematic? Well, it becomes problematic because often, though not always, this desire for comic studies to be a, how should I put it, a very, very serious thing, is often constructed at the expense of fans, or what I would rather refer to as like a community of readers. The people who actually go into comic shops, or go into bookstores, or go into their grandparents' basement and find these things that we call comics, or in my case manga, since that's probably what I'm going to be talking about more specifically. They find these things, and they read them, and they enjoy them, and perhaps they share them with other people, they share their thoughts about them with other people. The opinions of this particular sort of complex of individuals, whose opinions cannot really be reduced to any one particular thing, well, they're very poorly regarded among scholars, to be perfectly frank. I have noticed I subscribe to a lot of, scholarly listservs. And I have noticed just offhand statements in a lot of these in a lot of conversations that occur in these listservs that really seriously denigrate the fan, the community member. Now, the reason why I prefer this term, the community, it's something that I take more from video gaming, so from, like, say, StarCraft, Dota, things like that. The community is this term, this catch-all term, that is often used for the group of people who are both actively engaged in, say, playing the game, but then also at the same time they're consumers of the game, but they're also spectators of generally a pro scene, a competitive pro scene that surrounds that game. And the community is so identified because they're the very people to whom advertisers and also those people who make money off of this esport, as it's called, they're the very people to whom those in charge, the authorities or people who want to make money, have to be responsible to. And there's a very clear one-to-one relationship, and it's always fascinated me the degree of power, actually, that community members have over the very people who might otherwise simply dictate to them. Now, the reason why I have a problem with comic studies as it's developing is that in many ways it's trying to become like a mass media model where there's a very dictatorial relationship. I'm setting myself up as an authority, which is not necessarily a bad thing because, you know, people who spend a lot of time researching things and they know the history of something, there's nothing wrong with regarding them with a certain degree of respect. But I think it's a failing to, one, regard them as sort of the natural arbiters of taste. Additionally, for those people to sort of exclude the very readers, the very community members upon whom they rely. So it's a very long-winded explanation of my statement about why comic studies is ultimately a self-serving thing.